Thank you. Good morning. I'm very happy to be here. I have given workshops in more than 27 countries, on mountaintops, on farmland, in busy cities. This is the first time in a tent. First time to give a workshop in a tent. So thank you again, and I'm looking forward to working with you. So Green said I should introduce myself. In my heart, I'm a farmer. And even though I work in an office, as soon as I get home, I'm in my garden. And my father and my grandfather were farmers. So I come from Australia, right down the bottom. I'm a grandpa. I have 7 grandchildren. 4 children, 7 grandchildren. I grew up in a very beautiful part of Australia. And you can see on the mountains there was still forest. We used to go swimming and fishing in the river, and there were still wild animals in the bush. I loved the place where I grew up. But as a child, there were some things that made me very angry. People were cutting down the forest, and the wild animals were disappearing. The river was turning muddy, and there were many environmental problems. The other thing, as a boy, I would read the news. I would watch the TV news. And while we had everything that we needed in Australia, there were children, innocent children, growing up in other countries who were hungry. And again, this made me very angry. It's not fair. It's not just. So I said a prayer. The only thing I could do, I said a prayer. I said, "Dear God, please use me somehow, somewhere, to make a difference." And for my whole life, even now as an adult, I try to be true to that prayer. I studied agriculture, I got married, and we moved to Africa. I arrived in Niger, and the land had been destroyed. This had been a forest. By the time we arrived, all the trees were cut, and because of that, people were suffering. This photo is not Sahara Desert. This is farmland. And can you see the shoulders of my friend? He's drooping, he's very sad. 3 years in a row, there had been drought, and his crop had failed. When we cut the trees, we lose the farmer's friends. The birds, the spider, the lizard. So when I arrived, there was more drought. You can see the soil has lost its fertility. This is a dust storm. And sometimes the wind would bury the crop, and the dust would bring many illnesses. And you can see even physically it was difficult. Even the sand was coming into the houses. And you can see here the wind is burying the crop, and even the trees. And so I was a young man. I came to solve the problem. I thought, this is easy. If deforestation is the problem, we just plant trees. And we planted and planted and planted. Nearly all of the trees died. Waste of time, waste of money, zero impact. And you can see the trees struggling. And the droughts were very severe. You can see the dead cows, the very skinny cows. Because there were no trees, there were no insect-eating birds. I was getting very discouraged. You can see the grain silos empty. And so people were often very hungry. And the women walking so far to get food. And some years people died, particularly children. Most years the men left, looking for work, looking for food, and many villages were abandoned. And as a young man, I was getting very discouraged. And I thought, maybe I made a mistake. This is too hard. I'm just going to give up and go home. But in my heart, I couldn't give up. And I remembered that prayer as a child. Use me somehow, somewhere to make a difference. And I know God doesn't make mistakes. And one day I was delivering young trees to the villages. You can see the trees in the vehicle. And I was very discouraged because I knew most of those trees would die. But I felt God had put me there. God had called me there. And so I said a prayer. I said, God, please forgive us. Forgive us for destroying the gift of your creation. Because of that destruction, people are poor, they're hungry, they're frightened. But you still love us, we're your children. Show us what to do. Open our eyes. Help us. And that was the turning point. And on this day, this useless looking weed, this bush, caught my attention. And I walked a little bit closer and took a better look. And immediately everything changed because I could recognize the shape of the leaf. This isn't a weed. This is not a useless bush. This is a tree. And they have cut the tree down, but it's trying to grow back into a tree. And if you look in this landscape, there are millions of trees just like this one. For 3 years, I had been driving on this road. My eyes were open, but I was blind. I did not see what was there all the time. It was already there. There's what I call an underground forest, and it's waiting for you to open your eyes and to allow it to regrow. Past decades, that would have been a forest. I call it the underground forest because when we cut a tree down, there's still half of the tree alive under the ground. And it wants to grow. It's like a spring, but we keep cutting it. We keep burning it. We let our animals eat it. We treat it like our enemy. These trees are our friends. And we have to let the spring go by managing fire, cutting, and animals differently. When we manage these things differently, the tree will grow very quickly. And even in a dry region, the trees can grow very quickly because these roots are deep. They're getting water deep and nutrients. And in Niger, the old men would say, "Oh, we can't do this work. It takes too long for a tree to grow. But I'm hungry today and I need a benefit today." It's not true. Trees can go very, very quickly, and we can see benefits even in the first year, small benefits. And so what is this method we're teaching? When you cut a tree, it will grow many, many shoots, many stems, maybe even 20, 30 stems, all competing for the same food and light. So the first thing we have to do is to reduce the number of stems. And we select the tallest, the strongest, the healthiest, and we remove the others. I like to leave at least 5 stems. If I only leave one, as soon as I have a need, I'm going to cut it, and there'll be none. But if I leave 5, every year I can remove one, allow a new one to replace that. In the second year, I'll remove the second one, and it will be even bigger than the first year. And in the third year and fourth year, and so on. So even in the first year, there's a small benefit, but every year the benefit gets bigger and bigger and bigger. And in Niger, a dry country, the result surprised even us. We were surprised. In 3 years, it's like this, and the land is becoming productive. Year 1, then year 3, and then maybe year 4. So if you look closely, he's already harvested some firewood. He's already cut some wood. He's allowing this tree to grow for next year to harvest. And then he's got 1, 2, 3, 4 others. And some farmers, they've stopped cutting the tree at the base. They only cut branches. And so the land is never bare again. Can you imagine the difference? Which one will be cooler? Which one will have lower temperature? Which one will have less wind? Which one will have more fertile soil? Which one will provide honey, firewood, medicine? In some places, when we cut the forest down, we get dense scrublands, dense bushland. And it's still useless. We can't move, we can't grow a crop. It needs management. So we use the same methods, thinning, pruning, and reduce the number of bushes, and they can become trees. Just regenerating what's already there. We regrow from the roots what's already there, and the trees are starting to come back. And it's very interesting now, they started to leave the straw. They used to collect all the straw before. Now they started to leave the straw on the farm. Now they're starting to repair the damage. The women used to walk for many hours to collect firewood. They were suffering, and the children weren't in school because they had to help the mothers. As soon as they started this work, they had firewood close to home. As soon as they started the tree work, immediately there's a small amount of firewood available. And you can see the straw and the leaves from the trees, now it's starting to protect the soil. So now the soil is cooler, it's more moist, there's less wind, and it's more fertile. And you can see in a very short time, this is just maybe 2.5, 3 years, he's got a tree. This was a surprise to me as well. Trees can grow very quickly. And we can do this work with men. We can do this work with women. We do it with children. We do it with farmers, with herders, the livestock people. Do you remember that first photo, my friend with the stooping shoulders? He was very worried. How will I feed my children? What will I do in the future? Look at this man's face. Proud. He's not worried about the future. And look, many farmers say, I can't leave trees in my cropland. I can't grow trees with my food crop. Here he's growing his food crop right close to the tree, and it's growing well. The tree is protecting, it's fertilizing, and it's even making the soil more moist, more water. Crop yields are actually doubled. And you can see the leaves from the tree, it becomes fertile soil. And I know we can't grow crops in a dense forest, but if we pick the right kind of tree, so some trees work well, some trees not. So if we choose the right kind of tree, and the right number, we can't have too many, and we prune it so that the shade is not too heavy. We want some sunlight to come through, then we can benefit from having trees on our agricultural land. But we can also do this method on grazing land, where we run the animals, and we can also do this method in forest. I will show a photo of land where the trees have been cut, and the land has become bare. And when it rains, even a small rain is going to cause a flood. And the next day, the soil here is dry. This doesn't make sense. How can we have drought and flood in the same time? It's because we've removed the trees, and the soil has become hard like concrete. Now, if we restore the trees and we get organic matter back in the soil, like this soil here, this kind of soil acts like a sponge. It can rain, even heavy rain. There's no flooding. It's soaking and soaking. Only later does the water start to flow. Now, let's suppose there's a drought, there's no rain. Because the soil is like a sponge, maybe we go 1 day with no rain, 2 days, 5 days, 1 week, even into the second week, no rain, but there's still moisture in the soil. Why are we suffering from drought? Yes, climate is changing, but the big reason, we've cut down the trees. So if I ask you, what future do you want for your children? Everybody said, I want a better future. Part of the solution, we have to put the trees back on the land. And this was very dramatic. There was only a short distance close to the tree, away from the tree where I took the samples. So it was the same soil, but this one has been transformed. Crop yield doubled. You can see this photo is taken in a drought year. It had very poor rain. Away from the tree, the crop actually died. But here, it's a little bit cooler, it's more moist, and it's more fertile. So even in a drought year, farmers were getting food crop. Crop yields doubled. This farmer with no trees, This is the grain harvest. So this is how many kilograms? 300 kilograms of grain. With trees, the farmer harvested 750 kilograms. And so in Africa where I lived, over a 20-year period, the number of trees increased on farmland to 200 million trees. Farmers benefited. Neighbors would come and see what was happening and take that idea home and replicate on their own land. And in 20 years, 200 million trees grew on farmland. And you can see the difference from space. Before the work started, there were nearly no trees. You can see the bare space. Within just a few years, now there's at least 40 trees per hectare. So the farmers copied each other and the idea spread. So this was on agricultural land, farming land. We can do the same work on grazing land where we put our livestock. And you can see the grass is growing in between the trees. And the trees themselves, the animals are eating the leaves from the tree. And even the seed pods of the tree. The animals can eat the seeds of some trees. You can see the seeds here. It's good animal food. In all these pictures, the animals are eating leaves and seeds of the tree. Animal production increased 5-fold because now there's more grass and the trees themselves are providing fodder. This farmer increased his milk production. From 4 cows, he used to milk 52 litres in 1 month. It increased to 176 litres because there's more grass and more fodder from the trees. Here, the animals were starving to death. Now they're regrowing the trees. They stopped the bush burning. Look at the grass. They now have the best animals in the district. This photo was taken in the dry season, but the grass is still green. Temperature is cooler, more moisture in the soil, more fertile soil. And the farmers even have a surplus. They're selling hay on the market. This man used to burn his land every year. His animals were always hungry and they would escape and go into the neighbors' farms. Now his animals don't go anywhere. There's more than enough grass on his own land. He increased the number of animals more than 400%. He's keeping beehives and he's selling timber. He said, Mr. Tony. He said, Mr. Tony, he's talking to me. My children are in high school. Yeah, and he paid the fees. My children are in school and building a new house, a brick house. So much soil erosion, so much flooding, damage. The people were poor, they were hungry. The men were leaving to go to the city of starting to regenerate the forest. Not 20, not 10, not 5. Within 2 years, no more flooding. We have fodder. We have firewood. Even our crops are growing better. So this was the photo I wanted to show when I did this demonstration. When you go to the city, sometimes you see a water tower, huh? What's happened to this water tower? Is it a good one or is it a broken one?
Broken.
It's broken. We have no control over the water. This hill has been deforested. This hill is a broken water tower. When it rains, the water gushes out. The next day, there's drought. But down in the valley, there's flooding and damage. On this day, there's only 2 days difference between here and here. On this day, it rained, and immediately there's flooding and erosion, very bad erosion. On the fertile land, the maize crop was destroyed. The next day, the stream is dry. Remember the sponge. If the forest was still on the hills, that stream would be flowing for many days. And if that forest was there, if the forest was still there, it would be very unlikely to have such severe flooding. And so this community restored the forest. It used to be close to the surface, and now it's gone deep. This community is repairing the water table by reforestation. And now they have water for drinking, but also for irrigation. It's for honey. They have traditional medicine, so they're treating illness but selling the surplus. So this old chief, this is the one I said in Ghana, if it gets worse, we'll leave our land and go to the city. It was this old chief. Then in 2 years, they had fodder, they had fuel wood, they had better farmland. And this is what he said, this gift of FMNR, the method I'm teaching, this gift of FMNR, this gift is from the Almighty God, and therefore anywhere you visit, anywhere you bring it, you bring life and joy. So that's my wish for you, life and joy. And then we might want to do a survey, which trees are actually there. On this photo, this is agricultural land, and we walk, it looks like there's no trees here, but when we walked and looked closely, there were very small trees coming. You can see that we tied a rag, a cloth. So we just took a sample area, not the whole land, just a sample area, and we could see how many trees are coming, and we could see which species, which variety. They asked me, Tony, which species, which variety should we leave? And sometimes I know the answer, but many times I don't know. But many of you do know. You know which tree is a good fertilizer tree. So it's very important when I come to a new area like this, I have to ask you, which tree is useful for you? Many times, of course, the local people know the answer. They know which tree is suitable. But sometimes they don't. And they say, Tony, you tell us the answer. I often don't know the answer, but we can learn together. This method is called farmer managed.
Farmer managed.
Farmer managed regeneration. It's not called Tony managed natural regeneration. So I can't come like the teacher and say, you got it wrong. I can't do that because it's farmer managed. And if we experiment, if we don't know the answer, we can experiment. And the best experiment is when we share knowledge and work together as a group. And we can make a list of the trees. And what's the use of this tree? Maybe it's a fruit tree. Maybe it's a fertilizer tree. Maybe it's fodder tree. And then we can write our observation. So what we see in the field, maybe we see this tree is not doing well with the crops. It's causing the crops to not grow well. So this is our observation. So we're just writing what we see. This is very powerful. When you do this, you become the expert. You become the professor. So a few small tips. Number one, be careful. Sometimes there's snakes in the tree, or bees or spiders. Sometimes there's things that could hurt us. Also, we're working with very sharp tools, so be careful with the tools. We want to cut the tree, not our fingers. What kind of tools will we use? Just right. So this is ideal. This is what we like to do. In practice, it's very difficult to get it just right. So we try to do this. If we can't do it perfect, we continue anyway. And I'm not sure if you can see, this lady's got a stick. It's like a crooked stick. She's holding a stick. So she's got the stick behind the tree. It holds the tree steady while she cuts the tree. So it's just to hold the tree steady. Then she can be more accurate with the cut.
Oh, okay.
It holds the tree still.
Okay.
You can see better here the different photos. She's just using this stick to hold it steady. So when we cut upwards. We cut in this direction. It will damage the tree. So we always try to cut up. Sometimes you can't. Sometimes the branch is too low, but this is ideal. This is what we try to do. After 1 or 2 months, the tree's going to try and regrow where we don't want it to grow. So it's growing, but all the shoots are coming back as well. The tree's growing, but also all these extras have come back. So maybe after 2 months, 3 months, we come back and we take the ones we don't want again. You already removed it once. It's going
Again,
to,
it is coming.
Yeah, so you should go back in 2 months' time and remove
we
the
have to
second
remove.
time. Yeah. Many farmers take too many branches off. They're worried if they leave all the branches on, there'll be too much shade affecting my food crop. But if we take too many off, it's like choking the tree. The tree breathes through the leaves. If we remove the leaves, it can't breathe. And you can see what happens when you take too much off. Maybe the cows and the goats, maybe the wind will break that tree. It's too weak. So here the farmer's left many stems, so it's much harder for animals to break this one. And here he's left the side branches so that, again, it's stronger and it can breathe. The plant is stronger because he's left the leaves, and it can breathe, it can grow. And you can see, even though the cow's eating the tree, because it's got many branches, it's very hard for the cow to do a lot of damage. In many communities, they like to put a marker on the tree, a ribbon or some red paint. It's telling the whole community, I've deliberately protected this tree, please don't touch. So we can use ribbon or we can use paint. There's a problem though. Because I've tied the ribbon around the stem, when the stem grows, it'll get too tight. So we don't put the ribbon on the main stem, we put it on the small branch. I always get asked, how many trees would I leave? When we started in Niger, farmers were leaving less than 4 trees per hectare. Very small number of trees. They were very worried. They thought even 4 trees was too many. And then we challenged them, why don't you leave 20? They benefited. With 20, the crop yield increased and they had firewood, so they benefited with 20. Then we said, if 20 is good, why not try 40? They tried 40 and the crop yield increased even more. Today, I can take you to farmers who even have 100 trees on their crop land. So what I want to recommend is to start with a small number on your agricultural land. Start with a small number. Maybe 1 tree every 10 meters or every 20 meters, 1 tree. And then if that works, then next year try putting more trees. And if you find crop yield is going down, then you can always reduce the number of trees. The number of trees we leave on cropland, on grazing land, on forest land will be different. Crops need more sunlight. Grass is more tolerant. We can have more trees with grassland. And in a forest, we can have it very dense. We have many trees in a forest. So the question is actually very difficult for me to answer, how many trees? But a good rule is start small and increase. Remember, it's farmer managed or community managed. It has to meet your objectives for that land. And the answer will depend. Do you want more grain or more fodder or more firewood or more timber? The answer will depend on your objective for that land. So some trees have very deep roots and the crops can grow very close to the tree because the tree's getting moisture from deep. Some trees have very shallow roots, and when the crop tries to grow, this one's stealing the water. It's taking the water, and the crop is suffering. Some trees have very dense leaves, so that the sunlight's not coming through. It's too dense, too much shade. But some trees allow enough light to come through that the crop can still grow. And this is why it's so important for farmers to talk to each other and to learn from each other's experience.
Every 2 months we do the pruning. This one is now about 3 years old now.
Jazu pu mpelin sigina. Kange ye wote tengla pona la. Te wo nze basu wa phala. O abon fol so o tengla ma hogla. O yin nyang ma te nga pon dona. Enenge ka ma hobe te la tentam la tenha.
Mu sai suna da an ce zamanin sa'an nan mun yi zama da wani lasara wanda ya yaki da hamada. Wannan lasara sai muna ce musu ana ce mai tuni. To da wannan lasara ya zo ya ce shi zai yaki da hamada in mun kama mai. Sai muna mamaki ya za a yi kokowa da hamada ba mu da ice kuma ga iska ya zo sai ya ce sha ma Allah da dabarun da za.